and we'll have a panel discussion with the topic of Korea's competitiveness as a luxury tourism market. So first of all, I'd like to introduce today's panels. First, we have Mie-jo, professor of Sejong University. Myung-jin Jung, CEO of Cosmogen Tour Consulting. Ji-won An, vice president of La Goje Hanok Hotel. And lastly, we have Jin-wei Hwang, PhD of Korean Maritime and Fisheries Development Institute. So I believe a lot of people have high interest in luxury tourism. So what is luxury tourism? So people might think that luxury tourism is generally expensive. Professor Joe, how can we define luxury tourism in simple terms? To understand luxury tourism, it is necessary to first look at the definition of luxury. So, luxury, independent of any functional utility, can be defined as bringing esteem to the user by using or flaunting a particular product. So, luxury is not a consumption of product, but it is a consumption of feelings. So, the benefits by consuming the luxury products, especially for the luxury tourism, is closely related to the high level of self-concept of the tourist. Therefore, the belief or identity of the tourism can give better satisfaction for the tourist. And these elements can have a very great meaning for the symbolism of the tourist as a social or the political status. So it has the symbolic values and the pleasure values. So it is more focused on the feelings, not the utilities. Then what about the industry? So what is your target for developing your products? So luxury tourism products are generally not as easy to formulate or define as well-known high-end luxury brands. But for the tourism agencies, we have to plan and provide itinerary and the related and services, and the pricing will be based on those schedules and plannings. And we also take the role of operating those tourism products. In that regard, luxury tourism is the pursuit of the comfort and the safety at the same time at the luxurious services, including hotels, airlines, tourism, transportations, and the other services. And also the operation capability of the tourism agencies should be levied on the total cost. And also, we need to have to understand our target customers who can allow or who can afford those high price. So, more in detail, the consumption standard for luxury tourists is those who are within the top 5% of household income by country, or those who can use a business or higher airline classes. That is, it is the class who pursue a customized experience-oriented value consumption. For us, we are focusing on the communication on the luxury tourism users. So from their perspective, they will expect whether we understand their needs and social status or the position. So they don't care about the price or itinerary as the priorities. So in that regard, sometimes they ask for the references of the societies they should pursue or they're seeking for the tourism, because we are actually different from them. Because of that, the communication should be priority in order to attract more luxury tourism users. However, they want to exclude more over tourism. However, they prefer to have a sophisticated communications and the channels. So they will arrive in Korea with a tired body and hotel, and we provide a special service. We prepare a pillow cover with their initials engraved on it. And that kind of service can touch the heart of luxury tourism tourists. However, it also delivers a message saying we understand you and have prepared a service for you. Because of that, regardless of country, age, or gender, it is a service with the best feedback without exception. So for us, luxury can be more of forms or bragging. However, you just mentioned that luxury is a very close relationship between the travel agencies and the real users. And more in detail, the luxury tourists can be referred as a people who can afford the business or higher airline class, or who can use consumption of $50 million or more. I believe the Korean luxury tourism market would be relatively small, but what are the trends or the characteristics of the global market for the luxury tourism? So according to the ITB, the 4.2 account for the luxury tourism among all the global tourists. However, the amount of the funds is much bigger. So it shows that it is more focusing on efficiency of the tourism. So before the COVID-19 pandemic, we have about 17 million tourists coming to Korea. It means that we have about 760,000 luxury tourists. So the market size itself is not that big, but if we have interest in the luxury market and continue to the market, we believe we can have positive ripple effect for our Korean tourism industry. Because a lot of people have worries about improvement and the quality issue for the Korean industry tourism, and that's why a lot of people have interest and focus on the Korean luxury tourism market. We call the ultra luxury, which is the traditional luxury market, including United States and the European nations. There are some special luxury tourists, and we have to attract them. However, we can utilize our own contents in Asia, including cat food or K-medicine or the Hallyu Korean wave. However, we already have affordable luxury market for those target customers, and we can improve that. And the other characteristics of the Korean luxury market is we have a high portion for the business travelers. And already, overseas market are making a new coined a new term, B-luxury, which combines business and luxury. So it is urgent to develop the related market. And I heard that the Korea Tourism Organization has prepared the promotion events, so they're now operating the exposition hall for those business travelers. And I think it will be a good starting point to attract more business travelers for the luxury tourism market in Korea. You mentioned that the luxury tourism market in Korea is recovering in Korea. So there are some luxury travelers who can spend more than $10,000, but at the same time, we have different types of luxury tourism here in Korea as well. In that, we can say that we have bigger luxury tourism market at the moment, and I think we have to focus on the impact or the influence of the luxury tourism market. But if they pay more, they will ask more. Then is there any challenges because of that? We have to solve the issue with the price. But actually, there are a lot of luxury tourism products, but it can be in line with the concept that we are pursuing, which is a trend in the Korean market, which is bespoke. So based on that, we can be more flexible for the changes or the cancels of itineraries. So we have to understand those things and reflect those elements to our products. So, and after the contract, if there's like future changes or delays, it may like occur some inconvenience for the tourist. So we have to consult sufficiently before making a contract. However, after the product contract is concluded, the product operation should be carried out with the responsibility of being able to even prevent natural disasters. It seems that we're gonna be rain today, but I believe that you prepared the rainy season, right? That's true. We always prepare our tour for the rainy days and even for the traffic conditions. So I'd like to ask another question to Professor Cho. Well, Japan entered the luxury tourism market before us because for the diversification of the tourism industry, so Japan shows very high potential and competitiveness, and what is the reason for it? So Japan is now focusing on small ryokan and high-end restaurants. And also, very luxury business could be successful on the very high-end taste of the owners of the luxury tourism products. And also, luxury tourism tourists want to communicate with the owners of the product, and from the process, they can get the sincerity of the luxury tourism product. So the networking with the owners and the tourists can be a good hint for the success of the luxury tourism in Japan. And Japan already recognized the negative effects of the over-tourism and the marketing of local tourism products. So I believe a market-oriented tourism business that leads various tourism markets in a balanced way is being implemented. So in this regard, a market-oriented business is significant. So the ownership that can create this positive effect was the key factor of the great potential for the Japanese tourism market. So the ownership can be the mastership in the Korean term, and we have to focus more on it. So now we are recording this panel discussion at Lakgoje. And actually, Bukchon Hanok Village has struggled with the over-tourism. So how are you solving those problems? Well, Lakgoje is operated really private way. That we are operating our business based on the reservation. So although we are in the Bukchon Hanok Village, you can feel very comfortable ambience and private atmosphere. So we try to utilize and vitalize our private elements and the features. So like Japan has solved this issue in a very sensitive and sophisticated way, I believe that it can be a good solution for Lakgoje in order to survive from the over-tourism of Bukchon Hanok Village. Then what about us? What are the attractive contents that Korea has as a luxury tourism market? And how can we differentiate ourselves from other countries? So for the last 10 years, there has been a lot of differentiated contents that Korea has created, including K-pop, K-beauty, K-medicine, and K-food, and even Korean traditional culture. But for luxury markets, we need to think about how we can customize it to the needs of the luxury tourists. For example, a private fan meeting with a K-pop singer or one-to-one Korean cuisine cooking class with a star chef or
조선 5대 궁궐 중에 하나를 통으로 대관하는
private
프라이빗한 뭐 야외 행사라든지
event or the garden party with one of the 5 major palaces in full rental.
소수를 위한
So all in all, it should be focused on the customization and the experiences that other public cannot have or enjoy. In terms of the marketing, if those products can be configured, we don't need additional marketing activities. They will naturally come to Korea to experience those products and it will be sold really well. However, for the marketing activities, the public sector should give strength to the private sectors in order to stimulate this. Luxury market or the luxury tourism industry say that there's nothing impossible. So if there's great support from the public sector, I think everything can be possible. Like, I think we have rich resources for the luxury tourism market, but in order to be competitive, we're still lagging behind. By combining those elements that we have, we can create added value. And one of the interesting things you just mentioned is that the best marketing is the product that you don't need the marketing. There are a lot of information, and tourists search information by themselves. So even there are some restaurants, they don't hang up their banners. So that's the communication way for the marketing activities. I think your idea was in line with those trends. So we have to make the best quality first. So what about you, Ms. Jung? So for the trend of the luxury tourism, I think Korea has everything, traditional elements and modern elements. And actually, I read an article recently from the American Got Talent. Our World Taekwondo Federation demonstration team made it to the finals. And even the Korean song Sing Sang. So the judges exclaimed, what kind of country is it that Korea has such talented people? So that is that we didn't know our real potential and the competitive edge that we have, and we couldn't express them fully in order to appeal or attract foreign tourists. So these elements has already lead the luxury marketing industry or the luxury tourism industry, so we have to use these elements. So there's a saying that nothing is complete unless you put it in final shape. So we have to combine our elements, which is traditional and modern in a well manners, then it is possible to secure the market in a short time. I actually watched the program, The America Got Talent, so the World Taekwondo Federation demonstration team could go to the final with the gold buzzer, right? I was really impressed by watching the show. So they were the demonstration team of the World Taekwondo Federations, and they just showed amazing performance at the show. We have the talent and potential, but we are not fully utilizing and express that to the market, and that's the pain point that we have for the luxury tourism industry. So we have Dr. Wang, who is the cruise expert. And I believe the cruise takes a big portion for the luxury tourism market in Korea. And what does luxury mean for the cruise tourism? For cruise tourism is a luxury tourism by the public perspective. But actually, if we categorize the cruise tourism in detail, we can divide it into luxury, premium, and casual. And the luxury only takes about 5% of the total cruise tourism. And now we're combining theme to the existing casual products, and there are some products we call casual cruise tours, but it is not luxury, but it adds luxury themes to it.
럭셔리 크루즈가
But for
발전하기보다는
the
아직까지
Asian
그
market,
듀얼 크루즈가
the
상당히 좀
cruise
발전을 하고 있다고
tourism
이렇게 좀
products are
보셔야 될
still
것
more
같고, 특히
focusing on
이제
the
중국에서
casual
출발하는
cruise.
그 아시아 크루즈는 대부분
Especially
이제 좀그
most of the
듀얼
Asian
크루즈,
cruise
좀 문제
that departing from
비판적으로 이야기하는
China
거는 이제 저가 크루즈라고 이렇게 좀 이야기를
is a
할 수가
low-cost
있을 것 같습니다.
cruise.
그런 측면에서 이제 그 한국 시장에서 이제 그
In that
크루즈는
regard,
아직까지 정통
the
럭셔리
Korean
크루즈가
cruise
좀 우리가
market
경험하지는
is not an
못해서
actual
일부
luxury
이제 해외
cruise
나가서
market.
이제 럭셔리 크루즈를 경험하는 분들은
But there are
상당히
some
많이
people
있습니다.
who are
그래서 이제
experiencing luxury
그
cruise
앞에서
like
그 일반
tourism
관광에서 어떤
in
그
foreign
럭셔리 관광의
countries, including
가격보다는
Japan.
상당히 적은 금액으로 이제 럭셔리
So
크루즈를
the
할 수가
luxury
있는데
cruise can
일반적으로
be
이제 그
enjoyed
크루즈
with a
시장에서의 그
lower
럭셔리
cost
크루즈라고 하는 것은
relatively
이제
to the
원나잇에 이제
existing
500불,
tourism
600불 이상
products.
되는 그 정도의 어떤 가격으로 되고 있고
So
그다음에 캐주얼 크루즈는 이제
the
평균 한
average
150불
price
정도 되는
for
걸로
the luxury
생각을
cruise
할
is
수가
more
있을 것
than like
같습니다.
$500
그렇게
per
좀
night,
이해를
while
하시면
the
될 것 같고
casual
이제
cruise products has the
그
price
크루즈
around
자체는
like
저는 이제 뭐
$70 per night.
그 앞에서 우리 주제로 삼고 있는 럭셔리 관광과는 상당히 좀
So
차이가 있지만은
the
이제
cruise
크루즈
tourism
자체가
market itself is quite
럭셔리를
different
추구를 하고
from the
있고
luxury
특히 이제
tourism that
그
we are
일상
discussing
관광이라고
at the
저는 표현을 좀
moment.
하고 싶은데 일반적인 관광에 비해서
So
그 크루즈
compared to
관광은
other
돈에 대한
tourism,
가치라든지 그다음에
the value
엔터테인먼트
for
클래스라든지
the
식사라든지
capital or
그다음에
the entertainment, the food and
일상으로부터의 탈출
beverages,
그다음 여러 가지
or the
만족도에서
getaway
상당히
from
이제
the
높은
daily
그런
lives.
만족도를 보이고
In
있기
that
때문에
regard,
그런
cruise
부분에서는
tourism product
좋은
shows
어떤
higher
그뭐
satisfaction
경험이 될 수가
rates.
있고 또
So
일반적인
tourists
럭셔리
can
관광과
have
이제
better
많은 접목이
and
이루어질 수 있다라고
more
이제 생각을 합니다.
satisfactory
그런 부분에
experiences.
있습니다.
So I believe in the
크루즈가
future we can
그
add more
구분이
luxury
있네요.
elements to the
럭셔리
cruise tourism
크루즈,
market and the
그다음에
product.
프리미엄 크루즈,
So
그리고
we can
캐주얼
divide
크루즈.
the
세
cruise
종류가
market
있고
into three different
캐주얼은 한
categories,
70불
including
정도,
luxury,
그다음에
premium, and
프리미엄은 한 200불
casual.
정도. 1박
So for the
2일
premium
그리고
casual
럭셔리는 한
market, the
400
price for one night is around
400,
200, and
500
while it is
크루즈가
$7
일반적으로
US
이제
dollars for one night for casual
럭셔리다라고
cruise
생각하는데
products.
꼭 그렇지만은
And for the
않다.
luxury
그래서
cruise
특히 이제
products, we
중국
should pay
같은
for
경우에
around like 400 or more
우리가
than that.
저가를 선호하다
So
보니까
all the
저가
cruise
크루즈가 좀
tourism
많아서
products are
프리미엄이
not
좀
all luxury,
그 선사가 좀
in
빠져나가고
particular
그런
for
걸로 알고 있는데
Chinese one.
그런 문제가 좀
Because of
있었죠.
that,
예, 그렇습니다.
because
이제 사실 이제
China
국민간의
is
사대
pursuing
갈등이
like low
나타나고
cost, so
이후에
we
이제
cannot call it
여러 개
all
크루즈
luxurious.
선사들이 이제 아시아 지향에서 좀 일부 철수를 했는데
And
그거는 표면적인 면은 이제
after
뭐 한중 사드 갈등 이런
we
부분이
had a
있었지만은 이제
struggle with
중국에서 이제 그
thought,
크루즈가 저가로 형성되면서 크루즈 선사들이 선박을
cruise market
수입하는데
industry
그
had been
메리트가 좀
struggling in
줄어들었죠.
Korea.
다른 시장보다
And
성장성이라든지
because
규모는
of that,
성장했지만 그런
we
부분에서
lost a
좀
lot of
부정적인
merits
면은
and
좀
benefits
있지 않았나
for the
생각을 하고
cruise
최근에
companies.
어떤 그 국내라든지 아시아 지향에서 이제
And
크루즈 시장을 이제 건전하게 좀 더 이제
however,
럭셔리함을
after
가져가고
that,
그 그런
Asian
어떤
cruise
그
markets are
고급
establishing
크루즈를
its
그 선호하는
culture in a
분들을
sound
이제
and healthy way.
그 끌어모으기 위해서
And
이제
in
그좀
order to
다양한
attract
형태의 어떤
tourists who
상품을
are
개발을 하고
pursuing
있습니다.
luxury
그래서
cruise
럭셔리
market or the
크루즈도 계속
tourism
아시아
products,
시장에서
we are
늘어나고 있는
putting our
그런
best
상황입니다.
efforts.
우리나라는 선사가 안 들어와 있죠. 그죠?
So there's no cruise company
선사가
in
안
Korea, right?
들어있다라기보다 우리나라는 크루즈 정통
Well,
크루즈 선사가 지금 없는 상태라고
yes,
좀
we
보시면
don't
돼요.
have any
예.
traditional cruise company
그런
here in Korea
환경을
yet.
고려했을 때 우리가 할 수
Based
있는
on the
가장
environment,
활성화할 수 있는 방법은 어떤 게
what
있을까요?
should we do to revitalize
지금은 뭐
this
활성화
market?
여러 가지 정책들이 좀 있을 건데
There
이제
can
뭐
be many
코로나와
options.
관련해서는 이제 코로나 방역인데
In
그거는
regard
나중에
with the
좀 별도로 이야기
COVID-19
드릴 기회가 좀 있을 것
pandemic,
같고
we can
가장
promote
필요한
our
것은
K
이제 크루즈
quarantine, but we
선박의
can
공급이
talk about it
확대돼야
later.
된다고 생각을
But
합니다.
first of
이제
all, we have
그걸
to
왜 제가
have
이제
our
말씀을
cruise
좀
company.
드리냐면은 그 크루즈가 이제 우리나라의
Because
이제 그 코리아 국제 크루즈 선사 협회 통계에 따르면은 국내
according
출발이 한
to
4만 9천
the
명 정도 되는
international
걸로 이렇게
cruise
나와 있는데
surveys,
그 대만 같은 경우에는 한
there are
39만 우리보다 한 10배 많고 말레이시아는
there are
한
about
15만 정도 됩니다.
39,000
근데
cruise
이런 나라들이
tourists
이제
in
그
Korea.
우리보다
In
인구가 좀
Taiwan,
적고
they have 10
소득도
times
사실은
more
좀 낮은
tourists
편인데
for
왜
cruise
그런가를
tourism
좀
products.
살펴보면은
However, they have
우리나라
lower
4만 9천
income
명
than
나갈
us,
때
but more tourists are
우리나라에서
enjoying
출발하는
cruise
크루즈가
tourism
14배밖에 안
products.
됐어요. 근데 대만 같은 경우에는 이제 그
The reason is
39만
that
태울 때 그 220번의 크루즈 선박이 출발을 했습니다.
they had more
말레이시아 같은
vessels for their
경우에는 이제
cruise
15만 원 태울 때
tourism
50번이
products
들어왔고 결국은
in order
이제
to for
국내에서 그 나라에서
390,000
크루즈
tourists.
선박을 탈 수 있는 기회가
So it
얼마나
means
있느냐.
that
그 부분이 이제 크루즈 시장을 키우는 어떤 가장
the most
결정적인
important factor for the cruise market is how many vessels they have to for the cruise tourists. And I think that's the key factor to improve or to develop the cruise tourism market in certain countries. And currently, we don't have any cruise company here. So we have to find foreign or the overseas cruise company and attract them to come to our ports. However, we are now operating those products, so I believe that it will gradually develop developed and improved in the later. So it can be the short-term issue and short-term solution, and in the long term, we have to develop our own cruise company. And also, because of the COVID-19 pandemic issue that has happened at the Diamond Cruise, which has stayed at Japan's port, there are a lot of misunderstandings. It was not a problem from the cruise tourism itself, but it was a problem of the quarantine process. So we can prevent the issues fully. So we can set the quarantine process first.
그다음에 이제 싱가포르, 호주, 뉴질랜드, 이태리 이런 데서는 지금 이제 크루즈 선박이
And likewise, a lot of overseas cruise tourism products are operating under that fixed quarantine process, including Taiwan, Australia, and some European nations. So we can get lessons from them. So in order to develop cruise industry, we should set the quarantine process first and secure enough number of vessels at our ports. So actually, I was supposed to ask more questions about the cruise industry later, but you already gave full answers. Yes, that's true. There are a lot of negative perception for the cruise tourism because of the COVID-19 pandemic issue that happened at the Diamond cruise vessels, which has been stayed at Japan. But I believe that we can solve that issue with a fixed and clear quarantine process. Accommodation is really important for the luxury tourism. So what is the characteristic of the accommodation in terms of the luxury tourism? I think the first characteristic for the luxury tourism accommodation is uniqueness, and the second element is personalization.
럭셔리 관광객은 이미 이 관광 경험이 굉장히 많은 분들입니다.
Actually, luxury tourists already had rich experience for the luxury tourism. And Korea is one of the destinations they choose. They are looking for a very special element or the special experience when they want to go abroad. And Lacoste is a really unique and special accommodation that the others normally can experience easily. And also inside this hanok structure, the traditional Korean architecture structure, only few have good facilities as a hotel. So we are almost one and only hotel that can provide those services and the facilities. So that's why a lot of luxury tourists are coming to Lacoste. And the second element is personalization. So even from the reservation to the arrival, we are communicating more than 10 times with our tourists. So we are acting as a concierge of each tourist and providing personalized tour products. So we go beyond accommodation. So we can provide experiences that they can have here or the outside hotel. In that regard, they don't think Lacoste as a simple accommodation, but as where that they can satisfy all the needs they have. Satisfying the needs of tourists is always come out when we talk about marketing activities. Then what is your special know-how to satisfy the needs of the tourists? Is there any special secret for you? Well, the best key is to communicate easily and well with tourists. In my case, I treat all the tourists easily and comfortably as if they're my family members or the friends, and ask them what they really want to do in Korea. So the communication is the key for the marketing activities. I think this is not a problem only for Lacoste. However, information technology has been developed really well, so there are a lot of platforms, including OTA. So the tourism trends has been changed.
되고 있는데
there are diverse
그래서 또 이제
distribution
경쟁이 좀
channels.
심화될 것 같은데
So the
뭐 이런
competition
거에 대한 준비를 좀
becomes
따로 하시는 게
intensified. Then what is your measures
일반적으로
for
저희가
the
전통적인
competition?
공급이라고 말씀하시면은
So
보통
traditional
저희가
channel
인바운드를 받는 입장으로 생각을 하는데요.
is getting
그러면 이제
inbound
저희처럼 고급
travelers.
호텔들이 있고
So
그
there are
중간에 여행사가
accommodations
있고
like
이런
us,
구조를
and
많이
in
생각을
between
하시는데
there's a
사실
travel
럭셔리
agency.
시장은 오히려
However,
반대에서 시작합니다.
luxury
그러니까 럭셔리
tourism has
시장은
started in a
공급
reverse
쪽이니까 이
way.
클라이언트 사이드에서 시작을 하고요.
So the
그 클라이언트가
client
뭘
is the
원하는지
starting point of the
중간에
luxury
이제 뭐
tourism.
트래블 디자이너라든지
So
뭐
travel
컨시어지를
designers
이야기하면은
or the
그
concierges
컨시어지가
are the
일정을
one
딱 짜서
bridge
이제 공급
that get the
DM
ideas
저희
of the
데스티네이션
tourists
매니지먼트
of
컴퍼니나
their
저희
needs.
같은 공급 호텔들에게 이 오더가
And
떨어져요.
they deliver
사실
orders to
전통적인
the
구조상
accommodations
말씀해 주시면은
like
그런
us.
클라이언트 시작해가지고 저희
So
공급업체에
unlike the
넘어오는
traditional
그런
way,
구조가
it starts
사실
from the
구미시는
clients and
아직도
come to
럭셔리
us.
관광 시장에서 그게 유효합니다.
And it is still
아무리
effective in the
OTA가
luxury market.
굉장히 큰 포션이죠. 뭐
Although the
뭐
OTA
유럽에서
is
시작했고
growing
미국에서
really
시작했는데
rapidly and widely.
거의 점유 시장 점유율 압도적임에도 불구하고도
So they
럭셔리
have
관광객들은
overwhelming
이용을 하지
market
않습니다.
portion in the market share.
그분들은 다
However,
이거를 대행을
luxury
해주는
tourists
스태프가
don't
있고요.
use OTA.
저희
They have
전략은
their own
그 스태프의
concierge or
어떻게
the
연결을
agency
하느냐, 그
to
스태프에게
plan their
저희 투어를
itineraries
어떻게
and the
어필하느냐가
plans.
굉장히
So the
중요한
key
전략으로
thing is
이렇게
how
구성을
we
하게
can
됩니다.
appeal to them
그런
in a more effective
맥락에서
way.
이렇게
In that
KLTM이라든지
context,
ILTM 같은 국제 행사들이
ILTM or the
굉장히 많은 도움을
KLTM
주고
is
있습니다.
really helpful for us.
그러면 그 구미주가 달리 좀 동남아나
So
이런
unlike
경우에는
like
큰 차이가 좀
United
있나요?
States, what
그렇죠.
about the characteristics
동남아나
of the
이제
Southeast
뭐
Asian countries? Yes, there
홍콩이라든지
is.
싱가포르 저희가 아시아 쪽에서
Southeast
생각하는 그런
Asia
럭셔리
countries or
세그먼트는
the Hong Kong or
아무래도
Singapore, the
구미주보다는
luxury
IT 쪽이 좀
tourism
많이 발달이 돼 있습니다. 그래서
is more
그런
focused on the
럭셔리
RTA.
세그먼트에서는 이렇게
So
잘
for the
스태프를
luxury
시키지
segment in
않고
that
본인들이
Asian
뭐
countries or in that
인스타그램이라든지
regions,
이런 온라인상 리서치를 많이 하시고
they do their own
OTA들이나
research based on the
많이
social media,
쓰시는
including
것 같고요.
Instagram and
저희가
Facebook.
앞서 지난번
So
질문에
it is
말씀드린
important for
그
us to
고객하고
have
소통을
good images
통해서
on those
많이
social media.
커스터마이제이션을 한다고 말씀드렸는데
So as I already told you
특히나
that we are focusing
이제
on customization
동남아
of
쪽
like
럭셔리
experiences of our tourists.
그런 절차를 많이 겪게 되는
So for that, in that regard, we have a different channels or the trends with Southeast Asian markets. Yes, I believe we have to diversify our approaches based on the markets. So we've just talked about the current status of the luxury tourism markets. We also mentioned about the concepts and the current status of Korea. Now I'd like to talk about the future. Now the COVID-19 pandemic has an impact on the luxury tourism market. Then what are those impacts? Actually, we are running out of time. We only have about like 8 minutes left. So I'd like to I'd like to have answers shortly. So the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the polarization of the tourists. So there are upper class who are the main targets of the luxury tourism products. They also show the polarization inside. So it becomes more private, it becomes more customized, which means that there's a differences between the classes, even for the luxury tourists. So we could see the intensifying those polarization effect even for the luxury tourists. Yes, COVID-19 pandemic can accelerate the polarization of the tourists. So ultimately, they try to solve the safety issue through the luxury, right? I think the safety is really important issue for the public. However, for the luxury tourist, safety is already secured. Safety is a guaranteed service for the luxury tourist. So even for the luxury tourist, there will be a subcategories inside. What about Mrs. Jung? As Professor mentioned, I think there will be a detailed segmentation for the luxury tourists.
샤넬백을 사려고 백화점 앞에
Recently, we
줄
can
서는
see a
젊은
news or the
친구들,
articles. There's a long queue who are waiting in line to purchase a Chanel bag.
주저하지 않는 계층들이거든요.
So it shows that
사실은 이제
they are
여행이라는
not
부분들도
hesitant
본인들의
to
어떤
their
가치를
consumption
위해서는
if
어떤
the
편안함이나
value
어떤
meets
그
their
편안함이나
beliefs.
그런 부분들을 강조하는 부분들이 생기기
So
때문에
we
저는
there are
이제
some
럭셔리 관광이 약간
elements that
조금 더
focus on
대중화되지
the
않을까.
comfort or the
네, 그
convenience of the
명품이 예전에는
users or
어떻게
the
보면
tourists.
일부 계층들을 위한 어떤
So before,
전유물이었다면
luxury
앞으로는
brands
그
was
럭셔리
only for a
관광지
certain
사실
group or
럭셔리
the
관광이 아까
certain
말씀드린
class.
것처럼 정의로
However,
보는 게 쉽진 않거든요. 그래서
luxury tourism
편안함과
itself really
안정성을
hard to
추구하는
define.
그런
It
잘
should
준비된
pursue
관광을
comfort and
진행하려는
safety at the
어떤 그런
same
새로운
time.
신흥 그 럭셔리
And
트렌드들이
there will be a
많아져서
new
아마도 그
group
부분들에 좀
who
기대를
will
많이 하고
pursue
있고요.
this
또한
experience as well.
저희 이제 업계 종사자로서 좀 많이 고민하고 있는
And actually,
부분들인데요.
this
요즘
is what I'm
그
thinking
사이언스라고
carefully
하잖아요.
as a like
그래서
industry
모든 마케팅의 수단이 어떻게 보면 스마트폰으로
participants.
연결되고 또
So now
그들과
we are
저희 같은
living
경우도
in a
기존에는
connected
사실
world.
럭셔리
The
고객층들과
whole world can be
커뮤니케이션할 수 있는
connected
방법이
with the
없었는데
smartphone.
요즘은
So
SNS나
before, we
비디오를
didn't have a
통해서
specific
이제는
channel to
그들을 우리
communicate
고객으로
with our
만드는 게
customers and
아니고 우리
tourists, but
팬으로
now we
만들어야 되는
have our
상황이라서
social media
그런
platform to
방법들이
communicate
굉장히
with them.
많이
So we
마케팅 수단이 많이
should treat them
변화될 것 같습니다.
not as our customers, but we have to attract them as our
네,
fans.
시장을 좀 밝게 보시고 있는 것
So you
같아요.
have a very positive
아까
perspective on the
말씀해
market,
주셨는데
right?
더
Yes, right.
추가하실 말씀 있나요? 코비드가 그
크루즈 부분에서는 좀
For
간단히
the cruise industry,
그동안 이제 크루즈는 좀
so far,
대규모를 이제 그 관광객을 이렇게 한꺼번에 좀
cruise
수송하는 그런
tourism
형태였는데 코로나
targets a
이후에
mass
이제 그
tourist.
대규모 크루즈에서 소규모 크루즈 형태로 좀
So the
바뀌고 있는 그런
cruise
부분인데
tourism also
특히
is
이제 그
going
사회적
to a
거리두기
smaller scale
적용되면서
from the
정원의
big scale
50%만 이렇게 승선을 한다든지 그런 부분들이 있어서 소규모가 될 수밖에 없고 또
because of the
대규모
safety
행사
issue.
위주의
It
어떤
should
선대
be
이벤트에서
smaller and
이제
smaller.
체험 크루즈로 이제 좀
And
소규모 체험
before,
크루즈로
it
바뀌는
was
그런
the
부분들이
like
있고 그다음에
mass
이제
tourism with the
비행기에서도 이제 그
vessel like
프로젝트된
movement,
이제
but it will
안심,
focus on
웰빙
more like
같은 그런 좀 보장될
experiences
수
or
있는
special
그런
events.
고퀄리티
Also, it
어떤
can be
비행기를
connected
찾아갈
to
수밖에 없는 그런
well-being
형태죠.
elements,
그래서
so
이제
it will pursue a
코로나로
high
인해서 크루즈
quality
부분은 오히려 그
in the
굉장히
future.
럭셔리 쪽으로 더 다가갈 수 있는 그런 변화가
So
좀 있다라고
actually,
생각을 합니다.
COVID-19
아마 가격이 좀
pandemic
올라갈
was
수 있다고
the starting point
아무래도
for the
저희가
cruise tourism
방역으로는
to
좀
go
나름대로
to
명성이 좀
pursue the
있어서
luxury
비행기
elements.
선택할 때 안전한 개항지를 선택한다라고 한다면 그 부분에
So
있어서
for
우리나라에
the safe
굉장히 긍정적인
destination,
부분을 작용할 수 있겠네요.
Korea can be a good potential
마지막으로
like candidate
안보
for the tourists, right? That's correct.
코비드-19 이후로는 아마
So after the COVID-19
안전과
pandemic, so in the
소규모를
post-COVID
지향을
era,
하게 될 텐데요. 그렇게
tourists will
되면은
pursue a
규모의
small
경제가
scale
줄어들어서
and
전체적으로
safety.
여행의 비용이
Then the
늘어나지
scale of the
않을까
economy
싶습니다.
will getting
비용이
smaller,
늘어나게
so
되면서
the price
자연스럽게
or the
여행의
cost
빈도는
for the
줄어들 것이고요.
tourism will increase. So
고객님들은
naturally, the number
그
of
데스티네이션을
tourists
선택할 때 굉장히
will
조심하게
decrease.
선택을 하실 겁니다.
So
교수님께서 방금
tourists
말씀하신
or the
것처럼
customers
뭐
who will
몰디브라든지
decide the destination more
베트남이라든지
carefully.
조금 그
So
안전이나 그 의료
Maldives or Vietnam
기반이 조금 빈약한 곳보다는 그래도 국내처럼
or any other
방역을 좀
countries
잘했고,
which has less
의료
favorable
쪽에 연계
medical
확실한,
conditions, instead of
백신이
those
좀더 보장하지
countries,
않을까 싶고요.
tourists or the customers will prefer
그러면서 이제
destination with
국내
better
관광도
medical
아마 이
conditions or
얼트라 럭셔리
safe
세그먼트에서
environments.
어떻게 대비를 할 건지 국내에서는
So
사실 이
in
전용기를
Korea,
타고 들어온다는 게 굉장히 좀
we have to
흔치
find
않은데
out some
해외에서 굉장히
measures
흔한 일이지 않습니까? 그러면 저희는 어떻게 그 전용기를
of
타고
the
들어오는
limitation that we
고객들에게
have.
적합한 서비스를
For
할 건지
example,
등등
private
이 얼트라
jets.
럭셔리 세그먼트에 대한 생각을 조금씩
So
해보면
we
좋을 것
have
같습니다.
to
저희가
think
좀
about the urgent or the
해봤거나
transportation segment
대한
for the
약간
luxury
좀
tourism
부정적인 시각이
market.
있어서
That's
이제 럭셔리
true.
관광은
We have a very
어쩔 수 없이
negative
그
impact
그런 데
or
비용을
the prejudice
지불하기
to
때문에 그런
the
것들 편의를 제공해야
luxury
되는데 그런
items.
것들이 이제 좀 사회적인
But in
합의가
order
좀
to develop
이루어져야
the
되지
luxury
않을까라고
tourism market,
생각을
we
합니다.
have to develop
시간이
those
거의
private
없어서 이제
sectors.
저희가
So I
럭셔리 관광
agree with
활성화를
you
위한
that
시급한
we need
과제
to solve that
하나씩만
issue.
딱 말씀해 주시죠.
So
그리고
I'd like to
시청자들을
hear the
마치도록 하겠습니다.
urgent
네,
issue
지금까지 이제
for
한국의
the
인바운드
luxury
관광은
market,
중국
luxury tourism market
관광객의 어떤
for the
저가 상품으로
conclusion.
양적으로 이제 호황을 누려왔다고 생각이 듭니다.
I believe that
그러나 이제
we
새로운
were very
코로나,
affluent
이제
for the
포스트 코로나
lost
상황에서는 우리가
for the
질적으로
low-end
접근해야
tourism
되는
products.
시점에 와
However,
있습니다.
in the
따라서 이제
post-COVID
새로운
era, we
관광
have to
시장의
be
유형이
more
필요한데요. 저희
qualitative
한국의
analysis
국내
and
인바운드
pursue the
상황을
quality
보면
of our
이제 그
tourism
라이프 사이클상 이제
products.
재도약의 단계에서 이제 새로운
And
이러한 럭셔리 관광 시장의 하나의 대안이 될 수
now,
있다고
the
생각이 합니다.
post-COVID
저는 이제
19
타겟
era
국가의
can
그
be a very
포지셔닝
good
전략이 굉장히
alternative to
중요한데요. 이제
develop
거래
the tourism
비용과
market
이제
in
이익을
Korea.
고려할 때는
So in
이제
order
전
to
세계의 거시적인 관점에서
consider
보기보다는 이제 아시아
the
쪽에
transaction
물리적,
price
사회적,
and
심리적
cost,
거리가 가까운
we
이런 아시아
need to
국가, 뭐 중국, 인도,
focus on
러시아
Asian
이런
markets,
등등의
including
상계층을
China
타겟으로
and Russia. So we
포지셔닝
can
전략이
target
필요하다고
luxury
생각합니다.
tourists in those
지역
countries.
세분화 중에서 특히 이제 동남아시아의
That's true. Southeast Asia
그 인도
countries,
또는
including
러시아, 최근에 이제
India and
럭셔리
Russia,
투명 강국으로
can be a good
떠오르는
target for
그런
our
나라들도
luxury
공략하기
tourism
필요하다고
market and products.
대표님.
네, 아까 말씀하신 것처럼 저는
As we
가끔
already
우리나라가
mentioned,
과연 그 럭셔리 관광객들을 맞을 만한
I
그 차별화에
sometimes
대한 부분의
doubt
유연성이나
that
그런 부분에 대해서 과연 좀 준비가 되어
Korea
있을까라는 좀
is
퀘스천을 많이
prepared
받는데요.
to be differentiated and
이태리 같은
flexible
경우는
to develop the luxury
바티칸을
tourism
우승
market.
투어할 수 있고, 뭐
Because,
런던
for
타워에서 한번
example,
저녁 식사를 할 수 있고. 근데 그런데
there are a lot
우리나라
of
같은 경우는
like
저 이제
special
글로벌 CEO를
products
모실
that can be
때도
enjoyed in
아니면
foreign
뭐 세계 선배를
countries.
모실 때도 사실은 이제 관광지
And
특성상
in
어떤
Italy, a
관세 행사를
Vatican
해야 될 때는
palace are
그
open to the
45인승
public
버스를
or the
같이
luxury
태워야 되는
tourists.
경우가 있거든요. 그럴 때 사실 굉장히 많이 좀 난감합니다. 그래서 우리나라 근데 그분들은 본인들을
But there are some
이해하고
special
본인들을
needs
수용할 수
for the
있는
luxury
세대가
tourists
갖춘 그 어떤
in
관광
Korea as
지침이 좀
well.
원하기
But if there are
때문에 어떤 그
limitations, we're really
수용성에 대한
embarrassed that we
부분들을 좀
cannot do it
고려돼야 될
because
것
of the
같고요.
political
아까
issues.
전용기 편
So we have to be
말씀하셨는데
more
전용기
flexible and
편에 대한
acceptable for
어떤
those
그
special needs of the
절차나
luxury
어떤
tourists.
그 네트워킹 채널들이 좀
And
오픈이
also,
돼야
we
될 것
need to
같고요.
open our networking
근데
channel
무엇보다 중요한
or
건 사실 저는
the
항공편 증대라고
process.
생각하거든요.
But the
그래서
most
미주,
important
유럽
thing is
각국에서
to
들어오는
increase the
우리나라
number of
다양한
flights
노선이 있긴 하지만
coming to
아직까지
Korea.
많은 관광객을 유입할 수 있는
But
그런
it is not
조건에 대한
enough
부분들을 좀 많이
to
고민해야 될 것
afford
같고
the luxury
마지막으로는
tourists
저는
who want to come
협의체
to Korea.
구성입니다.
And the
사실 이
last
럭셔리
thing is the
관광을 위해서는
composition of the
여행사만의
council.
노력으로는 되지 않고요.
Because the
그
efforts of the travel
여행사가 정보를
agencies are not
수집하거나
enough
어떤
to
정보에 대한
develop the
어떤
luxury tourism
사례나
market.
어떤 그 뭔가를 확립할 때 사실 그
So
어떤
when
소리가 좀
establish
잘 나올 수가 없기 때문에
some
각
policies or the
분야에서 럭셔리
initiatives, we
관광객층을
have to gather all the
필요로 하는
voices
어떤 협의체 구성을
in various
통해서
fields. So
같이
by
생각해볼 걸
establishing the council, we can develop our luxury tourism market better.
대한 논의들이 되게 활발하게 진행되고 있는데
Well, there's active
결과적으로
discussion
뭔가
for the
협력,
composition of the council.
밸런스를 구축하는
But
게
ultimately, it is the
문제가 되지
establishing
않을까
governance
생각을 하고요.
between public
아까
and
이제
private sectors.
아주 간단하게 얘기했는데 럭셔리 관광 자체를
So
인정하는 게 굉장히
luxury
중요한 것 같습니다.
tourism market should be
그래서
recognized
결과적으로
first.
럭셔리라는 것들이 어떤 결과물보다는 과정에서의 어떤
Because
럭셔리가 굉장히 중요한 차별화
luxury
포인트라고 생각하는데
process is
약간 제도적인
differentiated
부분에서
factor
약간
for
그런
the
부분들을
luxury
해결할 수
tourism
있는
markets.
방안으로 접근하는 것도 하나의 방법이 아닌가라고
And
생각합니다.
we can approach the problem both from private and public
관광을
sectors.
포함한 이제 크루즈 측면에서의 이제 정책 방향을 좀
In the
말씀드리면
perspective of the cruise tourism
크루즈는
industry,
흔히
for the luxury
융복합
tourism
산업이라고
industry,
이야기합니다. 25가지
cruise
업종
is
정도가
the
결합해
combination
있다고 이제
business
WTO에서 그렇게
with
이야기를 하는데
25 different
사실 이제
sectors.
국내에서
And
이제
WTO
크루즈를
made
이제
this
담당하는 조직을
definition.
보면은
But the
해양수산부
organizations in
문화관광부,
charge of the
한국관광공사,
cruise
지역
tourism,
관광공사, 지자체 이제 그 정도 있거든요. 지역에
there are a
관광공사도
number of
있는데 사실 거기에
institutions who are in
직원이
charge of
한
the
명 내지
cruise
두 명
tourism,
정도가 이렇게
but
사실은
only with
또
one
어떤
or
때는 또
two
비슷한 업무를 같이
employees.
일을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 상당히
And
좀
even they're
어려운
sharing
그런 부분들이 있는데 저는
tasks.
그 중앙부처와 공사와 관광공사, 지역관광공사의 그 조직을 통합할 수는 없으니까
So we
그렇다고 새로운
cannot
조직을 지금 현재 만들 수
aggregate
있는
all the
상황이라서
institutions or the organizations, and also
정책 사업 추진단 같은 거를 좀
we
만들어서
cannot create a new organization at the
똑같은 일을
moment.
사실 하고 있거든요. 그래서
So
그
we
지역만
can
좀
create
다르고
a
그런 부분들이 있기
consortium
때문에 그걸 이제 협의해 나가고
to
공통적으로
share
할수
the
있는 그런
works and to find the works in common. And also, I think it would be better if we can have stronger task force.
하신 대로 어떤 그 지역 단위의 중국을 벗어나서 어떤 타겟 마케팅을 좀 강화하는 그런
Also,
필요성이 있다고
I
생각합니다.
think there's a need to strengthen the target marketing outside China.
협의체가 굉장히 중요한
Yes,
이슈인 것
that's
같습니다.
true. Cooperative federation
저도
between the
앞에서
public and
말씀하신
private
거
sectors are
굉장히
important. That's
공감하고요.
true.
두 가지인데
I
아마
agree with all the
정책과
ideas.
민간 협의 이 두 가지가 좀 키일 것 같은데
Cooperation between the public and the private
그것을
sectors are the key
매년
factors
이
to develop the luxury
전략을
tourism market.
수립하는 것보단
Instead of
전략,
like
20년 전략을
establishing
수립을
new
해서 그게
strategies
변함없이
every
쭉
year,
이어져야 되는 게
it will be
가장 큰
better
포인트라고
to
생각합니다.
sustain and maintain
저희가
the strategy,
시장의
a
점유율이
well-settled
4.2%밖에 안 되다
strategy.
보니까 그런데
Because the luxury
4.2%의
tourism market
그
takes a small
매출의
portion
점유율을
for the
생각한다면
total
좀더
of
중장기적으로
tourism
저희들이
industry,
대비해야 될 필요가
but
있지
the
않을까
profit
그리고
from that small
그동안 우리가 문제가 됐던
portion
저가 문제를 해결하는 굉장히 중요한
is the
정보들이
reason we
있어요.
should take more focus on this
이것으로서
market.
패널 토의는 다
So here
마무리했고요.
we'd like to
저희가
conclude the
온라인
panel
라이브
discussion,
과정에서 이제
and we'd like to
시청자분들의
receive
질문을
questions
받아
from the
많은
audience
분들이
from
올려주셨는데
online.
저희가
So we
시간이
could
거의
see
다
a lot of
돼서
questions
오버한
on the
걸로 알고
channel,
있는데
and
다는
unfortunately,
좀
we're
한 번만
already
제가
past all
한번
the time that we
선정을
have, so
해보았습니다.
we just picked one question from the
안지원
audience.
사장님한테 질문이고요. 럭셔리 관광객의 경우 커스터마이징이 핵심이라고 하였는데
So
실제로 일반
customization is the key
관광객과
for the
비교했을
luxury
때
tourism
기존에
market.
구성되지 않은 상품을 요청하는 경향이 많은지요?
And like,
네.
is there like many
럭셔리
requests
관광객
from the
같은
luxury
경우에는
tourist
일상입니다.
of a
사실
new
럭셔리
product that
그들의
has not been
정의는
existed?
아까 말씀드린 것처럼
That's
불가능한
normal
것을
for
가능하게
luxury tourists
만들어라라는 그런
because
과제를
their
저희에게 많이
offer
주시기
or
때문에
their
일상
request is often
커스터마이징에는
for
들어간다고
making
보시면
possible
되고요.
possible.
심지어
So
어느
the new
정도까지
request is everyday
어느
life.
럭셔리 브랜드와 같이 함께 한 행사 중에 하나가 있는데
Sometimes I already
아시아에서
experienced there was a special event from the
1인당
luxury
1억씩
brand.
쓰는 그런 분들만 초청해가지고 했던 VIP 행사가 있었습니다. 근데
There was a VIP
얼마나
event
이게
for the customers who spent more than 100 million Korean won,
저희가
and
전통
they
체험을
made
아예
a
풀대로
number of
저희가
special
강사님 모시고
requests.
쫙 준비를 해놨는데
So
그
we
일정 전날
prepared the
임시로 좀
special like
마음만
tea
잡더라고
event
더
for
이상
them.
필요 없다고 갑자기
But
1시간 전에
they
말씀을 해주시는 겁니다.
Canceled the
어쨌든 그들은
event
비용을 다
only
지불을
1
했고
hour before
그
the
저희 시간에 대한
tea
비용을 다 지불을 했으니 그거를
education
참석을 하든 말든
because they
그거는
drank too much.
자유다라고 생각하시는 분들이기 때문에 뭐
So
받아들여야죠. 저희는 좀
they
실망
don't
많이
care how
했지만
much they
어쨌든
spend
받아들이고
already
이게 다
on
럭셔리
the
관광객에
whole
대한
itinerary, but they can
당연시
cancel
생각하는
anytime.
부분이라고 생각하고
And
그렇게 업무를 진행하고
as
있습니다.
the general public, it was really hard to understand, but I believe it is the characteristic of the luxury tourist, so we just accepted his offer. Okay, here I'd like to finish the panel discussions and the Q&A sessions as well. So with 4 panelists here with us, we talked about the past, present, and the future of the luxury tourism market. And actually, the time was too short to have in-depth discussions, but I believe it was really meaningful time to think about the luxury tourism market of Korea. Every risk has opportunities at the same time. In order to turn the COVID-19 pandemic to an opportunity, we have to make more efforts. So safe and customized desire for the tourism products is in line with the luxury tourism market and products. And I believe the current situation can give a great momentum for the development of luxury tourism market. And I hope that today's discussion was the opening or the starting point for the development.